My name is Christina Currie, and this is my digital documentary about managing wildfire suppression for the protection of Peters Mountain Mallow. What is fire suppression? Well, simply put, it's a prevention of wildfires that threaten communities or ecosystems. Fire suppression includes planned and structured burning of land for forestry, wildlife, and land use purposes. Prescribed burns, also known as controlled burns, are important for forest management. A prescribed burn is an intentionally started fire, which helps increase overall health of the forest and decrease the risk of large fire events. Our fire suppression techniques have evolved over time, as we've learned that complete suppression of fire is dangerous and not good for the health of an ecosystem. We now try and match prescribed burns to what is known about the historical fire record, which is called the fire regime. An intro to Peters Mountain Mallow. It's an herbaceous perennial with 15 to 20 flowers during its blooming season from June to August. Its seeds require burning to create scarification in order to germinate. It is a globally rare and federally protected species, which is found only in Giles County, Virginia. It was discovered in 1927 with a population of 50 plants, but by 1992, the population was down to only 3. Thanks to recent conservation efforts, the population of Peters Mountain Mallow hovers somewhere between 50 and 100 plants in any given year. The current threats to Peters Mountain Mallow include grazing by deer and feral goats, hikers, curious hobbyists, and continued fire suppression. I was born and raised and still live in Virginia, but I know that very few, if any of you, can say the same. So here's a map of Virginia with Giles County highlighted. It's in Western Virginia on the West Virginia border and is located near Blacksburg, which you may recognize as home of the Virginia Tech Hokies. What's the issue? Decreased natural burning means that fires are smaller in extent and lower in frequency, which damages fire-loving plant populations called pyrophytic plants. These pyrophytic plants depend on fire for some part of their life cycle, and low numbers also means that their populations will have lower genetic diversity. This is especially dangerous for plants like Peters Mountain Mallow, which are not self-compatible. So what's being done right now? Current efforts include seed banking, where it's been discovered that Peters Mountain Mallow seeds are viable for up to 6 years, and management of invasive species like garlic mustard is being taken more seriously. In addition, Peters Mountain, which is home to Peters Mountain Mallow, is part of a protected reserve with limited public access. However, during deer hunting season, public access is allowed and deer hunting is encouraged in order to keep the deer population under control and minimize the risk of grazing to Peters Mountain Mallow. Suggested solution number 1. Transplantation of seeds after scarification. Pros. This would increase the rate of germination for Peters Mountain Mallow and take advantage of its long viability in a seed bank. The cons are that Peters Mountain Mallow doesn't like to be transplanted. In general, Peters Mountain Mallow has about a 20% survival rate. When transplanted, the survival rate decreases even further, and it's unlikely to benefit the population much. Suggested solution number 2. Add additional controlled burns to more closely mimic what is believed to be a historical fire record. Pros. This increased amount of fire means increased germination of pyrophytic plants like Peters Mountain Mallow. Cons. This would be expensive due to the materials and labor needed. It could be potentially damaging to other plant species in the area, which are not pyrophytic, and too much burning can create a similar issue to not enough burning. If plants don't have enough time to reestablish, the population size will not grow. Suggested solution number 3. Modify the protected area and manipulate conditions to maintain the optimal conditions for pyrophytic plants. Pros. This would be an area where the proper fire regime is established and multiple native pyrophytic plants could be protected in one area. Cons. This again would be expensive due to labor and materials needed, and introducing additional pyrophytic plants, even if native to the general area, in order to create a protected area for those pyrophytic plants, can be seen and interpreted as a manipulation of nature. So what's the best option? I believe the best option would be to add additional controlled burns to the area and more closely mimic what we know of the historical fire regime. Recently, researchers have been suggesting that one prescribed burn every 3 years is not enough. This is based off the fact that there was a prescribed burn in late 2001 where they saw a bloom in population size, and then in early 2004 there was a naturally occurring wildfire, which also led to an increase in population. More intensive study led to the current belief that prescribed burns should be taking place every 2 to 2.5 years. Future applications. Other pyrophytic plants that you might have heard of include eucalyptus, lodgepole pines, giant sequoias, and buckbrush. There's also another group of plants called opportunistic pyrophytic plants, which occur only after wildfire. They grow quickly on the land that's recently been burned and are only found in areas where burning has recently occurred. These plants include star thistle, fireweed, and Scotch broom. As we learn more about how wildfire suppression impacts pyrophytic plants, like Peter's mountain mallow, we can use that information to assist other pyrophytic and opportunistic pyrophytic plant species, whose populations may also be struggling.